It should be a race day, but obviously some great ideas from Leslie and Tom have enabled us to host this online Zoom seminar here at the club. Rule 18 is what it's all about, mark room, something that will hopefully help us when we do get back out on the water sooner rather than later. But anyway, if you give us a very friendly welcome for Ben and for Tom, who are doing our seminar this afternoon. Thank you for your time, guys, and I will let you explain about the rules, the do's and don'ts for the Zoom meeting, never mind Rule 18.
Well, we've just got to get the technology sorted. Now we need to get this. Cannot get the slides up. First problem. Not. Nothing's happening with the slides. Sorry guys, we just don't mute it. Yeah.
Yeah, if you unmute yourself, then you can just an introduction and I'll fix this while you start.
Okay, good. Good afternoon everybody and everybody on the Zoom. First of all, I have to apologise if we have technical glitches. We're all trying to find out how to use this technology, so please bear with us while we have any problems. The way we're going to handle this afternoon is, first of all, we'll have a presentation. I'll do the first part and Ben will do the second part. The first part will be to go through the rules, and then the second part will be an illustration of a number of situations, which is what Ben's going to talk about. Then hopefully we will have time for some questions. We'll have a bit of a break and we'll explain to you how we're going to handle the questions on the Zoom. It's obviously easy for us to take questions from the room, but it's much more difficult to control who is speaking and who we're going to talk to in the room. Now, the first problem we have is that we can't get the slides to come up. Rob?
Yeah, it's coming.
We should be able to share it.
Yeah. Online you've got it coming up.
Yeah?
It's disabled your end.
It is indeed. We're just trying to find out how. Can you see it at your end?
Yes.
Okay, so it's something wrong just here. So we might as well start. Let's have your phone so we can track where we are.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to talk about Rule 18. I say make simple. Oh, actually, we need it on the screen because the people in here can't see it. Rob, so this
Yeah, it's coming.
just bear with us for a few moments. We need somebody who knows how to do it.
It's supposed to have a No, it's not. It doesn't work as advertised.
Ben,
Yeah.
try clicking use dual monitors, see if that fixes it.
Clicking?
Use dual monitors. Because if you're viewing it on your screen, try clicking that one, see if it...
There is some comment about the Zoom or sharing.
Press and hold both volume keys for 3 seconds to use talkback.
I wonder. I don't know.
Oh, we've gone some.
Alright, I've just enabled it from Queenie's phone for you.
Okay, we want to get rid of this stuff on the left.
Go down to the right-hand side.
We can't see that on here now.
Why didn't you go and help them work?
Yeah, any IT experts in here?
Not an IT expert.
If it enlarge this, Rob,
Hmm?
Okay, we need to
Can make it
put
full
it up
screen.
on here.
So I've got the wrong glasses on now.
We all should be experts in Zoom by now. I did one. It worked very well.
I bet you had an IT man there.
I was a participant in the meeting, not involved in it. There was a bunch of barristers.
I can't see the pattern and at the same time.
There you go.
There you go, yeah.
Okay, well, wait a minute, no, don't go.
Don't go outside.
Marco, I need it on here so we can, but we've got to click the forwards and backwards. It's not on here. Purple. But I need the button. Move forward the screen. The next slide.
The mouse is up, Tom, the mouse is working on here, so scroll it.
Can I do it with this? Is this moving?
Can you just scroll
Yeah,
it?
there you go, there you go.
All right, so we'll sorry about that, everybody. We'll do it best we can. Okay, so we're going to talk about Rule 18, as we've said several times. It says made simple. I'm not sure quite how simple it's going to turn out, but we will talk our way through it, and hopefully it will be more clear at the end. So, first of all, what does Rule 18 do? Well, one thing I haven't put on there is it keeps the Protest Committee busy and keeps all of you occupied. But actually, it's there for a very good reason. Unless we had Rule 18, keep clear boats would be unable to get round marks until all the right-of-way boats have gone round. And it also tidies up some other issues. But let me just give an example of that. So here are two examples. So on the left-hand side there, you've got two boats approaching the windward mark. Without Rule 18, the yellow boat is right away because he's lured boat, and he would simply be able to luff so that the blue boat had to miss the mark and miss the mark altogether. Rule 18 prevents that from happening. And on the other side, hopefully, we have a port running boat trying to go around the mark to be left to starboard. And in the absence of Rule 18, he'd just be stuck because he's got to give way to all those starboard boats, and he would never be able to get to the mark. So Rule 18 is not there just to make life difficult. It's there to help give way boats get round the mark. So let's get into the rules themselves. So first of all, when does Rule 18 apply? Well, before I do that, I just want to talk a little bit about the way the rules are constructed. Basically, in the rule book, there are some basic rules. Rules 10 through 14, and maybe 15 and 16. And then everything else is an exception to situations that occur in those rules. So when you're reading the rule book, if you make sure you understand the basic rules, and you understand that all the other rules are basically conditions which are exceptions to the basic rule, it will help you understand the structure of the rules. So Rule 18 is an exception to the basic rules, the port and starboard and windward leeward and one or two other things. And within Rule 18 itself, there are a number of exceptions. And that's what makes it complicated, because it's a complicated situation going around marks, and all of the exceptions make the rule appear more complicated than it really is. It's exceptions and exceptions to the exceptions, and probably exceptions to the exceptions to the exceptions. So it gets really quite tiered and complicated. But as long as you go through it step by step, it's easy. So when does Rule 18 apply? Well, it applies between two boats grounding mark on the same side if one of them's in the zone. And we'll talk about the zone in a minute, but we've got an unless, because there's some exceptions to when it applies, and we'll come back on that. But let's just talk about the zone. So, in normal match racing, the zone is a circle which is 3 hull lengths of the boat closest to the mark. A circle 3 hull lengths away from the mark, of the boat closest to the mark. Now, the 2 points about this are, first of all, that it's the boat that's closest to the mark that determines how, where the zone is. So even in this case, the blue boat in Frank Pong is, whatever he is, 72 feet or something. He is not yet in the zone because he's not the boat which is closest to the mark. The little boat is a J80, and the little boat in this case is calling the zone. So when the J80, which is in front, is 3 boat lengths from the mark, he's in the zone. So when you're on the water, you need to be aware of the size of the boats around you and on the side of the boat is closest to the mark. And just for the pedants amongst us, the rule says hull length. That is the length of the boat excluding appendages. So the bowsprit is not part of the hull, according to the equipment rules of sailing. So it excludes the bowsprit and it excludes an overhanging rudder. So it's 3 hull lengths. Say that's a little bit technical, there you go. So when one boat is in the zone, it applies unless, and now there's some situations where it doesn't apply. Well, the first one is it doesn't apply at the starting line when the boats are approaching the line to start. So it's pretty clear when a boat's approaching the line to start. It's in the last few seconds when it's aiming at the line and it's all set up to start. It applies, it doesn't apply at the committee boat end of the line, and it doesn't apply at the pin end of the line, whether it's the committee boat at that end or a mark, or the anchor line that's holding it in place. The next situation where it doesn't apply is when the boats are on opposite tacks on the beat. Again for the pedants, beat here has now been clearly defined within the rules as to being what most of you assume it is. There was always the argument that a boat may have overstood the ley line and is bearing off the windward course a little bit to get back to the mark, and were they on the beat. Anyway, that's all cleared up. If they're now, what all of us understand is beating to the mark, they're on the beat as far as this rule is concerned. It doesn't apply when one boat has gone round the mark and is starting his run, if it's a windward mark, is starting his run downwind, and the other boat is approaching. So it doesn't apply between those 2 boats. And it doesn't apply if the mark is a continuing obstruction, which would mean something like the mark is an island. In that case, a different rule applies, which is Rule 19. If we have time at the end of today, we might talk about Rule 19, but I'm not sure how we get here. There is another situation where it doesn't apply, which is in little letters at the bottom there, which is very difficult to come up with an example of, and so I think we can forget about that one. Right. So let's move on to the rule itself. Well, the basic rule is that the inside boat is entitled to mark. However, this being racing rules of sailing, there are some exceptions. So we need to understand the exceptions. But you need to have in your mind that in the absence of the exceptions, the basic rule is what applies, which is that the inside boat is entitled to mark. and I'll go on to define what marked room is in a few minutes. Now, actually, no, I'm going to define marked room in the next slide. So, marked room is, as it says there, room to sail directly to the mark, and room to sail a course round the mark. If you're not a right-of-way boat inside, that's all you get, which is still enabling you to get around the mark, but it doesn't give you the right to sail a proper course. So if at the end of a downwind leg you would like to take the mark wide and sail a proper course around it, come around tight around the mark, well, if you're the inside boat, you're not allowed to do that. You're just allowed to sail directly from where you are to the mark, and when you get to the mark, sail a course round it, not a fast proper course, but just to sail your course round. But that's pretty good, because otherwise you wouldn't get around the mark at all. If you're at the windward mark and you're an inside boat overlap to windward, then you're entitled to room to tack to go around the mark. So the outside boat, which is under normal circumstances is a right-of-way boat, because it's a little boat. But under this rule, the outside boat has got to give you room to tack to go around the mark. Now that only applies if you're overlapped. If you're a boat windward and clear ahead of an outside boat, you can say it's outside, you're not entitled to room, so you've got to keep clear. So here are hopefully a couple of examples. So in the left-hand one here, we have an inside boat, which is a windward boat, and so he's not right away. So he's pushed the outside boat away from the direct line, so the inside boat is taking room that he's not entitled to. And if there's a protest from the outside boat, the inside boat is going to lose. On the right-hand side of that diagram, the inside boat is behaving properly. He's sailing directly to the mark. He's not swung wide away from the mark. Now, having said all of that, let me just say one thing, which I'll deal with a bit later on. If you're involved in a collision whilst you're in a marked round situation, then Rule 14, which applies to boats avoiding collisions, still applies. So if you're in a collision, and even if you're right, you could still be disqualified if it comes to protest. So the rules are quite clear that you should not get involved in collisions. A couple more examples of marked room. The first one on the left is the windward boat who wants to tack to go around the mark. Well, in this case, the yellow boat has not given the windward boat enough room to tack, so the windward boat's transoms hit the yellow boat. And if there's a protest, certainly the blue boat is going to lose. The protest committee will have to decide whether the windward boat could have kept clear, and whether it was damaged, and if the windward boat is to be penalised under Rules 14. The second of those is two boats coming down to the mark on a leeward leg, and the inside boat has correctly sailed to the mark, but when he's got to the mark, he hasn't hardened up quickly enough. He hasn't sailed a proper course round, well, not a proper course, he hasn't sailed the course necessary to go around the mark. He's sailed too wide, so the outside boat is entitled to protest the inside boat for taking too much room. Okay, so having and seem to be rushing through this. Normally we break off with any questions. I guess we could allow questions from the room. That's where we've got so far. Yes, sir.
Yes, Tom. The diagram on the right.
Yes.
What if the green boat can't come hard up because he's having trouble getting his spinnaker down?
We can't
Does he
hear.
still get protested?
We'll repeat the question for you. We'll just hear Bob with his question and then we'll repeat it for you.
So the question was if the inside boat is having difficulty getting his spinnaker down, and what is the situation? So Ben, you could say something, give my voice a press.
So the question was on the right-hand diagram, if the green boat is struggling to drop their spinnaker, and how do the rules play out? That's a very good question, Bob. And the rules do allow some element of, the rules require you to be seaman-like, reasonably competent. So if you are dropping the spinnaker poorly, not in a seeming-like and reasonably competent way, you'll probably not be entitled to your mark.
Now somebody out there has got their mic unmuted. Could you mute your mics, everybody?
If you're watching remotely, can you just have a look and see if you've muted the mics?
We can hear somebody talking.
Does that go some way to answer your question? So
Yeah.
What happens if it just comes through and you're in trouble getting it down through no fault of your own?
Well, that's it. So Bob asked a little bit more. He says, what about if there is a gust comes through, making it difficult? Well, again, as well as being reasonably competent, you're entitled to room which takes into account the existing conditions. Okay, so there is a case in the casebook that says that you have to be able to be given room for the existing conditions. And so if it was a really gusty day, on a really gusty or wavy, choppy day, squally maybe, you may be entitled to a little bit more room than if it was simply a nice, calm, easy day. So room is defined in the rule book here, along taking into account the existing conditions and the performance of the boat, taking room to be that which is reasonably competent but not expert.
Thank you, Ben.
You're welcome.
Okay. All right. So if we just go back, I said a few slides ago that the inside boat was entitled to mark room, and we've talked a little bit about what mark room is. But now we get to the next exception. Oh, okay, so not quite there yet. Okay. So this has gone out of sequence. Sorry. There we go. Right. Okay, so the exception is that the inside boat having mark room depends on how the boats entered the zone. And this is rule 18.2b and 18.2c, if you look at the book. So there are a number of parts of this. So as the leading boat enters the zone, then the overlap situation at that time determines what the rights are inside the zone. So if there's an overlap as they enter the zone, then the inside overlap boat gets marked. And if they're clear astern, in other words, there isn't an overlap, then the boat that is clear astern must give the other boat marker. Now, if that's the position as they enter the zone, then effectively those rights are retained regardless of what happens between entering the zone and getting to the mark. So if the overlap is later broken, if the outside boat is going faster and there is no overlap, well, the inside boat retains his rights to mark. It's not given up. If the inside boat, if there is no overlap at the mark and the inside boat is going faster and he gets an overlap 2 boat lengths from the mark, well, he's not entitled to mark room and he has to do whatever is necessary to give the outside boat that is outside to give him room to sail properly to the mark. That might involve the inside boat luffing up and maybe even missing the mark, or whatever else he can do to slow down and let the outside boat keep his mark room position. So that's really repeating itself to a degree that if the outside or clear astern boat becomes overlapped inside the other boat later in the run to the mark, then the outside or clear astern boat must still keep clear. Bit of a mouthful all of that, but the principle, I think the principle should be clear. Does everybody understand that? Any questions? Okay. Now, those rules for mark room, 18.2a as well, I should have put that on the slide, the entitlement to mark room stops when either the boat has been given mark room or a boat which is, if mark room is being given on the windward leg and the boat inside entitled mark room has passed through head to wind, that turns the Rule 18 off. Or if, as sometimes happens, the boat that gained mark room leaves the zone, then it all starts again when they come back into the zone. So normally in that normal situation is that the rights to mark room stop when the boats have left the zone and the inside boat has been given mark. Now there are a couple of other rules which are quite important. 18.2e says, and it says a lot of things, but what it means is that if there's doubt about whether there was an overlap or not as the boats enter the zone, then you go back to the previous position of certainty. So if you think you're going a bit faster than the other boat, and you think you've broken the overlap, but the other boat doesn't think you did, and it comes to the room, then it will be up to you to prove that you have broken the overlap. And if you're the inside boat and going a little bit faster and you think you got an overlap, but the other boat says you didn't, then again it will be up to you to prove to the satisfaction of the protest meeting that you did get an overlap. So when you're in a position where it's very close as to whether or not there is an overlap in the zone, it's better to think back yourself to, is this a doubtful situation, and maybe not push it if you think there might be a chance that the protest committee will think that the other guy was right. Because it's up to you as the person either gaining or losing the overlap to prove that happened. Now, there's one other situation, which is that the rule has got to be reasonable. So if there's a situation where, for whatever reason, the outside boat can't give you mark room, Maybe there's a whole string of boats on the other side of him, and he just can't get 10 boats to move out from the mark, then you can't just push your way in there. So you're not entitled to mark room if the boat that you're asking to give it to you is not able to do that. And as I say, if there are a lot of boats involved, it might take quite a long while for him to ask the next one, then the chain of requests to go down the line, and it's quite impossible to get 10 boats to move away from the mark sufficiently quickly to give the inside boat. So in that case, you can't push it. You just have to do whatever it is you've done to go behind. Right. Any questions about that? Okay, so let's move on. At windward marks, okay, there's a special set of rules which apply at windward marks between the port boat, which is tacking to go around the mark, and the starboard boat, which is already laying the mark. So, and I've got some diagrams which show this in a moment to make it clearer. But if you go through head to wind inside the zone, in other words, you're just starting to tack, you must not force a boat which is already laying the mark to go above close haul to avoid you. Okay, just pause for a moment and think about that. Okay, and I've got some diagrams to make it easier in a minute. And the second part of that is that if you, for example, cross the head of a boat, the starboard boat that was laying a mark, and you tack immediately to windward of him, and he gets an overlap inside, which he might well do if he's going past when you've done a tap, then he is entitled to mark them, and you must give him that mark. So let's just look at a couple of diagrams. So in this first one, I can't see the positions here. At position 3, the blue boat has forced the yellow boat to go above close haul, and he's broken 18.3. Because the yellow boat was fetching the mark, the blue boat went through head to wind inside the zone, and he forced the yellow boat up above close haul. Okay? And the other half of that is that the blue boat has crossed in front of the yellow boat and tacked to windward of him, and the yellow boat, because he's going faster, has got an overlap, and the yellow boat is entitled to mark. The blue boat must give him mark. Okay, any questions about that? The judges, if they're on the water, will often be sitting at the windward mark watching for people breaking 18.3, because you get a string of starboard boats coming in, and the port boat has always got a problem in terms of how does it get into the starboard approach line for the mark. And the port boat in doing that has just got to be careful not to interfere with a starboard boat that's coming in. I saw a question. No?
Can I just add something?
Yeah.
So a lot of times we hear on the water people mistakenly saying you can't tack in the zone. I don't know if you've heard that before, shouted at you or something. People erroneously think you can't tack in the zone. And what 18.3 does is it shows that you can tack in the zone, but you can tack in the zone, but you have to be careful with these two important things to watch if you do it. And the first one, as Tom said, was if you tack in the zone, you must not let you must not force the other boat to sail above close hauled. And the other one, if you tack in the zone and you end up above them, you can't squash them below the mark. So we can tack in the zone, but we have to be careful when we do it. And that's 18.3, quite a special rule for that situation.
Yeah. Question.
A question regarding the previous slide. Okay, in this case, what happens if the blue one is a quite slow ball and the yellow one is a very fast ball?
Yeah.
So the blue one is it tag and it says finish the tag. But because of this slow ball, and then the yellow one has to slow down. In order to slow down, it might head up, right? So.
Well, the
question.
You need to repeat the question.
Yeah, the question was what happens in the situation where a boat is tacked in front of a starboard boat that's approaching the mark, and the starboard boat is going much faster than the tacking boat, and the starboard boat has to take avoiding action for the tacking boat. Well, the answer is the same as before. If the starboard boat has to go above close haul, then the port boat has broken rule 18.3.
So how do you react the yellow one? On the moment, say,
Well, the yellow one must go up and avoid the collision, otherwise it breaks rule 14, and he must protest.
and the other numbers 18.3 to them, and they will know
Let's
on the
just-
moment.
The question is, if the yellow boat is a fast boat, the blue boat finishes attack, and the yellow boat is running towards the stern of the blue boat, the yellow boat must avoid the contact and must keep clear because she's astern. But if she has to go above close haul to do that, then the blue boat has broken rule 18.3. Okay, because the rule says the blue boat must not cause the other boat to go up and above close haul. Or if the yellow boat has to go below the mark for some reason,
The port boat.
the port boat and go below the mark, then the blue has also broken that rule. So,
And the rule doesn't just apply at the moment of tacking. If the boats continue towards the mark and the blue boat realizes he's not going to quite lay the mark and tries to shoot the mark and forces the yellow boat above close haul, he has still broken 18.3. It doesn't just apply at the moment of tacking.
Yeah, so am I right in thinking that if I was the blue boat in this situation, the thing to do would be to sail past the course of the yellow boat before tacking and then leaving room?
That would be a safe thing to do if you could cross ahead of the yellow boat and leave him room to go inside.
What if the yellow boat has overstood as on a tight ridge and then he's been forced up to close haul but not above close haul?
If it's been forced up to close haul, it's okay, but you know it gets pretty difficult. It's a defence we hear quite often. The starboard boat, or the port boat says, "Oh, he'd overstood and he wasn't. He luffed up, but he didn't go above close haul." The protest committee will make its judgment.
This is trying calls, by the way, very big wave, and we overstood, and then what happened in the mark is crazy, always.
Anyway, the protest committee is always right.
And then on street on the moment.
I think the answer to that question, answer to the question is that if the starboard boat fetching the mark is coming in very far off the close haul course, maybe reaching in, then the blue can expect her to come up to that close haul course without breaking rule 18.3. So the key is whether she has to go above it.
Yeah, it'd be nice for the port boat to have another boat as a witness. Okay. Right, just as another special rule. at leeward marks, Rule 18.4 says that if you have to drive, if you're on the inside boat and you have to drive to go round the mark, then you must drive at the earliest possible opportunity. So you can't run on beyond your course to the mark and force the outside boat to go wide. This doesn't apply at gate marks, incidentally. It only applies at a single leeward mark situation. So there's a diagram which hopefully illustrates it. So here we've got an inside boat that was sailing properly. He was right away boat until he got to the mark, because he was on starboard. He was inside starboard boat, so he didn't have to sail close to the mark, which is back to what his mark would be. He can sail a proper course, but where he blew it was he didn't jibe at position 3 quickly enough to let to round the mark at the earliest opportunity. He sailed on beyond it, and if the outside boat protests, the inside boat is likely to be picked.
I have a question from Nick Southard. He asked if there is any time that a starboard boat does not have rights coming into a leeward mark.
Well, we've got some questions. We've got an example of that coming up.
All right.
So shall we leave it till we've got the example? Yeah. Okay. I mean, yes. The answer, simply the answer is yes, because port and starboard on a downwind course does not affect the rights going round the mark. So if you're in the zone, starboard loses his rights. Okay, one other thing I want to cover is conflict with other rules. The rules provide for exoneration is while you're taking the marked room that you're entitled to under this rule, you break one of the other rules. So you're entitled to be exonerated if you break rule 10, 11, 12 or 13, which are the basic boat-on-boat rules from port and starboard, with astern, and tacking. You're exonerated on those, but the tacking one you get pinged under 18.3 instead. Somebody's got their mic on out there. Could you everybody turn the mics off? It's overriding us.
Where is Rob?
Yeah.
Talking to the kids.
Who's got the kids? You can't see who it is, unfortunately.
No, you can't hear.
Can.
You can.
Okay, we can't on this one. You can you? Okay. So 10, 11, 12, 13, you are exonerated for. 14, which is the avoiding damage, you are not exonerated for. And we should all do our best not to get involved in damage. 15, which is acquiring right of way, and 16, right of way boat change in course. You are exonerated if you break that. And quite often, a boat will break, a boat taking marked room will break rule 16. And I think, Ben, you've got an example of that. Those are covered under the rules. Now I'm going to pass over and let Ben have a go now and talk about some real situations.
Thanks, Tom. I wonder what we missed out over there.
I don't know what happened to that.
Just give us a moment, folks. We're just looking for a couple of slides.
So it got missed somehow.
Somehow got missed. We'll see if we have them.
It's stuck here. The technology is beating us again. You can see it from there. I can't see it.
Let's see if we can find those two slides.
Okay, right, yes, so somehow we got, this overlap slide's got missed out because it's not working quite properly here. So let's deal with overlaps, a couple of situations on overlap. I think most people know what an overlap to windward is. It's pretty clear that the bow of the glue boat is further forward than the line drawn through the transom of the yellow boat, so the blue boat is overlapped to windward of the yellow boat. Similarly, the yellow boat is overlapped with the red boat, but also under the rules it says that if there is a boat overlapped with both boats between them, then the overlap is extended. So under the rules, the blue boat is overlapped with the red boat. So that applies when we're looking at overlaps coming into the zone. And the other one is overlaps off wind, anything below 90 degrees from the wind. The thing that people very often don't realise is that first the overlap can be between boats on different jives, different tacks downwind. So a port boat can be overlapped with the starboard boat. Secondly, they don't realise just the extent of the overlap. So in this case, the line drawn through the transom of the blue boat extends past all the other boats on that line coming into it, even though they're a long way away from it, and they may think that they're not overlapped. Well, they are overlapped, and if they were in a position looking to gain an inside mark room right, well, both of those starboard boats are overlapped inside the blue boat, and both would have right at a mark if they're going around it the right way. Okay, that's what you want. Sorry, mate.
Well, yes, Tom.
I have a question. Can we just go back one slide?
Yes.
So this doesn't apply then upwind, so the grey boat is not overlapped, or?
The grey boat is not overlapped with any boat. Sorry, I missed the grey boat.
Because they're opposite tacks.
Because they're on opposite tacks.
But the question was, on this slide, does the grey boat overlap those other boats? And the rules say that on opposite tacks going upwind.
We can't hear you.
The question was whether the grey boat is overlapped with these boats. And on opposite tacks going upwind, boats cannot be overlapped. Right? How do you hear me now? Is there anyone? If you can't hear me, just let me know.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay.
You just need to be a bit closer.
So I'll be a bit
Why don't you
closer.
move over here so you've got
Okay.
the key seat?
Well, thank you, Tom, for the very comprehensive look through Rule 18. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to take us forward to some scenarios where we can try and apply those rules and the philosophies and the principles which Tom has talked about in real scenarios. The scenarios I've chosen are because A, they've come up recently in our local sailing, but also because they come up time and time again, over and over again. So I hope we can get something out of this, get an idea. Here's the first scenario. And I'm going to give people a moment to digest what is going on in here. It's a slightly smaller diagram. This scenario plays out at a starboard rounding leeward mark. In our fleet racing, we don't often have starboard rounding marks, and therefore this scenario is a little bit less familiar to our fleet racers. However, if there's for example, a leeward gate, and some of you who have sailed our local Typhoon series will remember a leeward gate, there is a starboard landing leeward mark where this scenario will play out. We can see the yellow boat is on starboard tack, sailing downwind towards that mark. And we can see the blue boat is on port tack, on a different tack, and we remember that on opposite tacks sailing downwind, boats may be overlapped. Okay? Let's just read what the yellow boat said in this situation. The yellow said, we were approaching the leeward mark, the leeward starboard mark on starboard tack. We noticed blue approaching on port tack. We hailed starboard, but they continued to force their way in. We had to bear away to avoid a collision, and we protested. So that's how this might come to a protest committee. And we would now just try and work through these rules systematically according to what Tom has just told us. Remember, Rule 18, the most key part of it is what was the state of the boat when the first boat entered the zone. That's what we're going to look at. If you look carefully, you'll see in position number 2, the yellow boat's bow is right at the edge of the zone, and the blue boat in position 2 is a little bit further back, maybe a meter or 2 meters or whatever to go. So the yellow boat was the first to enter the zone. At position 2 then, we're going to ask ourselves, what was the situation of the overlap at that time, at that moment? Well, as we've just talked about, if we draw a line from the blue boat's stern and ask ourselves, is any part of the yellow boat, equipment or hull, forward of that line, we can see that the whole yellow boat is forward of the blue boat's stern line, transom, and actually the yellow boat was very much overlapped. And we can even do that for the yellow boat's transom as well, and we'll see the blue is in front. These boats were definitely overlapped at the moment the yellow entered the zone. And that's really important, because the next part of the rule, as we've just talked about, says if the boats were overlapped at the moment the first entered the zone, the outside boat thereafter shall give the inside boat marking. So in this case, the outside boat, when they come together, is yellow. The outside boat shall thereafter give the blue boat marking. Okay? Someone asked a question, a remote listener asked a question, is there ever a time when the starboard boat, the right-of-way boat, is required to give up some of her rights? Well, this is an exact scenario where that happens. Yes, we can see yellow as starboard, but she is required to give up some of her all-wielding almighty rights to allow the blue boat to land. Any questions so far on this scenario?
Can I just add something, Ben? In this situation, yellow and blue are fairly close together, so perhaps yellow would have worked out that there was an overlap and he had to give blue. But it equally applies if there's a starboard boat way up towards the E of example. He would be overlapped with the blue boat. So the overlaps extend a long way when you're looking at downhill situations.
So yeah, that's one of the keys, is that the common misconception with Rule 18 is it's first come, first served. Actually, it doesn't necessarily mean that the first to the zone gets the mark ring. As we see in this diagram, the yellow boat was first to the zone, but doesn't get the mark ring. Okay? Another common misconception is that the starboard right-of-way boat has wields almighty, unwavering power, and in this example, we can see the right-of-way boat doesn't. All right? Well, how did this play out? Well, by now, some of you will be working out how this would have gone in a protest situation. And the conclusion here would be that yellow was overlapped at the time she, the first boat to enter the zone, and she must give blue the inside boat marked green. Unfortunately, yellow's survival instinct kicked in. She bore away, there was no contact. In this case, no rule was broken. Okay, so luckily we have a fortunate situation in this one. But I think you can all see how misunderstanding this rule could lead to a dangerous situation and possible damage and injury. So, any questions from here? I'm not quite sure how we can deal with questions remotely, I'm afraid. But if there's no more questions here, yeah, go on.
This is supposed to be in the gate and the right mark. So if it is in the left mark, then it is applied.
So the question is this is obviously a gate, the starboard rounding or starboard rounding end of a gate. On the other end, we don't really have this confusing situation, and that's because the mirror image happens and actually the inside boat is also the starboard boat. But when we're starboard rounding, that's why it becomes confusing, because yellow thinks she's got all that power, but actually she doesn't. Any other questions? I'm going to move on to another scenario. Oh, just before I do go on. Another common time we have the same kind of application is at the finish line, at downwind finish line, where both boats must leave that committee boat to the same side. And you can see how green in this situation actually is required to give blue mark room to finish. Okay? And often we see this coming up and the green boat pushes the blue boat so close to the committee boat, and her spinnaker drags over the committee boat because she didn't give any mark room to the blue boat. Well, the starboard boat here has to give some mark room. Right? So similar situations, aren't they? Just different angles. The second scenario, again, comes up quite often and it is quite common. And these two boats are coming in now on the starboard tack. They're both on starboard. And this is called shooting the mark. I'm sure we're all quite familiar with this move. If anyone is not sure what I mean by shooting the mark, it's when we are holding our speed because it's going to be tight whether we can get round. We hold our speed until the last minute, and then we suddenly luff up, use our momentum to get round the mark. That's what I call shooting the mark. The yellow boat said, we stayed quite far apart as we sailed toward the mark because we knew we were windward boats. Blue was below the ley line to the mark. Suddenly, blue turned up sharply. We didn't have any warning. She didn't hail up. She almost T-boned us. Blue's bow split damaged our boat and we protested. Well, that's what the yellow said. She clearly believes that she was entitled to a bit of warning, doesn't she, in the middle, and unfortunately there was some damage. I actually do have Blue's statement here. Blue said, we were right on the ley line. We knew it would be close. We kept our speed, and at the last minute we shot the mark. At the same time, yellow bore away to around the mark. I was very slow and could not avoid hitting her stern with my bowsprit. So you have these two boats coming in. There was a collision, and we would now consider all of those rules that Tom talked about and go through systematically. Remember, what was the situation when the first boat entered the zone? Well, I think we can all agree here that whether it was yellow or blue, it's hard to tell, that the boats were overlapped when one of them entered the zone. And we know that if the boats were overlapped, the outside boat at that moment shall thereafter give the inside boat room, mark room. the outside boat was yellow. So we must give blue mark room here. If you remember, there was a slide saying what mark room is, and mark room is room to sail to the mark. Well, they've done that. And then room to round the mark. Is shooting the mark taking room to round the mark? I think so, right? The blue boat, in order to get round that mark, has chosen to shoot the mark, and she's entitled to do that. So, unfortunately, at the same time blue shot the mark, the yellow boat turned away, and there was that collision. You remember here that yellow was complaining that there was no call of up, up. There was no warning that blue was going to do that. And some might say that blue, in any other normal circumstance where there was no mark, blue couldn't do that because she would have broken Rule 16. She would have changed course and broken Rule 16. But you'll also remember Tom talking about exoneration. Okay? In this case, even if blue did break Rule 16, because she was taking the route to which she was entitled, she gets exonerated by it. And yellow didn't give blue mark room to do that. So, how does this play out in terms of a conclusion? Yellow was overlapped outside when she entered the zone. Yellow was required to give mark room. Blue did not pass head to wind. If you look very carefully at that diagram, blue didn't go through the wind. Blue was taking mark room to which she was entitled, and therefore yellow broke the mark room rule 18.2. Alright? So yellow there thought she was protected a little bit by that rule 16.1. In this case, she doesn't have that protection. Again, another big misconception that the other fundamental rules always protect her. Any questions on these two?
Yeah, so there's someone raised on the screen. Somebody's raised their hand.
Okay, that's great. This is the first time. Okay, so we have a question from Kenton. Kenton. Go ahead.
What if yellows to sell on close hold? I mean, blue still has more room, even if yellow boat is still above close hold.
Correct, because the bit about close hold came in Rule 18.3 when a boat had tacked in the zone. But in this case, neither boat had tacked. If yellow is able to sail above close hold and give some mark room to blue, then she would be okay. And she would probably, that would be a better idea in this case. But blue is entitled, again, blue is entitled to take the mark room to round the mark. And if yellow needs now to get out of the way by second close horse, blue hasn't broken any rule. Does that answer your question? Yeah? Any other questions on this this situation? Yes, one from the room here.
But if the blue boat had come in on port and still been overlapped when they entered the zone and got into that situation, could she still have bluffed up to shoot the mark?
So the question was if the blue boat had come in on port and got into that situation on the last three diagrams there, the last three positions. If she had come into port and she had tapped into the zone, Rule 18.3 starts to apply, and she doesn't get to enjoy being able to force the other boat above close hold. And in fact, I think if we looked at the rule of 18.3 in the book, you'll notice it says something like, when 18.3 applies, 18.2 doesn't. Is that correct? Okay? So, when someone tacks, all the other mark room things are gone, and it's all about that rule 18.3. But that wasn't the case here because no one did tack in the zone. Good question. One more question from the back here.
Is blue only allowed to go head to wind?
Absolutely. The question was, is blue only allowed to go head to wind? And you'll notice on the conclusion number 3, that actually that's written down as an important part. You're correct. Had blue gone past head to wind, then she would not be able to enjoy that mark route anymore, because remember Tom said when the boats are on opposite tacks, rule 18 stops. Or when the boat passes head to wind, rule 18 stops, right? So blue is only allowed to luff up to, but not past head to wind to enjoy that mark route.
Who has to prove that you didn't go above head to wind?
So the question is, if blue and yellow come to the room and argue about this, who's the proof as to whether blue did go head to wind or not? What we would do in that situation, if it's a he said, she said, is we would look at as much of the evidence we can. We'd ask the different parties questions. We'd ask the yellow boat what told you that the blue was passing head to wind, and we'd have to make a decision based on the balance of probabilities. So there is no onus of proof on one boat or the other to prove their case, but they have to provide as much information as they can in evidence that we can make a decision on that.
You know, as the two boats come together, there's a lot going on there, and people will not see exactly.
Hi Dennis, just give me one moment. I just have one more question from the floor here.
Sure.
Go on.
Well, at the moment they come together, there's a lot going on there, and whether that boat was head to wind or slightly beyond is very, very difficult to ascertain, I would think.
Yeah. The question is that actually in that position number 4, where the boats have contacted each other, there is a lot going on. Helms might be looking at different things. You know, it's very difficult, and I can't say any more than we just have to look at as much of the balance of probabilities, the evidence, all the evidence that's given to us to decide who actually was in the wrong if it came to the room. On the water, the clear thing here would be that the yellow boat who knows she is required to give marking, to actually give that marking and be generous with it, you know, not to make a situation where there is doubt, or not to put these boats into the doubt. She is the one required to give marking, so I would give plenty to allow this boat to get round. Dennis, you had a question.
Yes. If the yellow boat not even sail the course as you show on the diagram, but even veer away a little bit and close the gate, and I was on the blue boat to avoid collision, I don't have any room to round the mark at all, so I have to go below the mark. Okay? So if I was in the blue boat, would your advice be I still need to go back around the mark again and ask for redress, or can I go on with the race?
So the question, I think all the remote people would have heard that because it comes through on Zoom. Did everyone hear the question?
Okay, well, if you were forced to go below the mark to avoid the collision, you should do that. Everybody should avoid a collision if they can. The fact that you have had to do a circle below the mark and rejoin the race, and you have to do that or you would not be sailing the course. So one of your questions was, could you forget about going around the mark? And the answer is you can't. You must go back and re-round the mark. But unfortunately, this is one of those situations where you cannot get redress. So you might apply for redress, but you would not get redress in this situation. You would protest, and the other boat would probably be disqualified. But that's as far as it goes.
Dennis, does that help? You understand that one? Does that answer your question? Yeah. So basically, you need to protest. You need to avoid the contact, Unfortunately, you won't get the redress, and you still need to go around and round the mark afterwards. You get a good pat on the back for avoiding the contact there.
And let's just add to that, and I sound like a broken record on this, but if there was a collision and there was damage, then the protest committee would certainly be trying to work out whether you had taken as much avoiding action as was reasonable. Because if you could have avoided damage and you didn't, then you might be disqualified as well.
So,
I have a question. This is Howard. Can you hear me?
yeah,
Yes.
hi, how are you?
Okay. You said that there is a contact and that there is a damage, right? And I think that the blue boat can actually avoid the contact by not shooting. So your decision does not have any question on the blue breaking Rule 14. So I'd like to hear what you think.
That's a good question. The question was whether blue broke Rule 14. And I remember Tom saying that you don't get exonerated for breaking Rule 14. That's a really good question. I don't want to get hung up with it because it becomes a bit of a judgment call. But what I have tried to do in this one is make it look like the yellow bore away just at the same time blue made his laugh. And therefore it's probably too late for the blue to avoid. It happened at the same time. So if blue had laughed thinking that yellow was going straight, she goes into laugh, and at the same time yellow bore away, we might be able to forgive yellow for Rule 14. Does that answer your question? Sorry, blue for Rule 14. Does that answer your question, Howard?
Yeah, thank you.
It's a close one, and we'd have to take the evidence and then work it out. One more question from the back on this one.
It's not really a technical question, Ben, but if you've got two boats that are in separate classes, as the race committee, if there's no redress and there's no advantage to one class getting another class boat banned or disqualified, would you rather that's not brought to the protest room?
The question is, if the boats were in two separate classes, do we still want to see these protests coming to the room, even if it doesn't advantage one boat by getting the other one disqualified? I think my personal opinion is I do want to see these boats, all the protests. If people feel that someone has broken the rule, they feel like they want to teach that person a lesson, or they just want to put things right, then bring it to the room, protest the boats.
You know, the rules are there for two reasons. One is that we have fair sailing, and the second is that sailing is safe. And we really have to comply with the rules, and we really have to be prepared to penalise people who break the rules, because they're jeopardising either of those two things, safety or fairness.
Yeah.
It's Cameron here. Can I touch one?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, you talked about earlier a different scenario here, the starboard rounding Leeward Mark. I didn't manage to join all your presentation. Could you talk about the other classic scenario with a port rounding Leeward Mark, with the inside yacht coming in on port and the outside yacht on starboard?
Yes, certainly can. So I think we had a slide. I'm just trying to see if we did have a slide, but maybe we didn't.
I didn't see one.
Well, the key about your question, I think this is as close as you can get. Forget everything after position 3 here. Just imagine these boats approaching. You see there's not that much of a confusion here, because the port rounding mark means that the inside boat is also the right-of-way boat. And so that's why it doesn't really pose as much of a confusion, because the starboard boat is inside at the time the first reaches the zone, and therefore not only has the rights to mark room, but also has the right of way as well.
Yeah, but I'm talking about one being on port, but in yellow, and one blue being on starboard.
Well, yellow in this diagram, I can't see it. Yellow could be on starboard.
Yellow's the starboard.
Yeah, yellow's on starboard, yeah.
So does
But he's both on starboard. He's both right away boat because he's on starboard, and he's also inside boat.
Yeah, but I don't want that scenario. So I'm asking about is the inside boat is on port.
Okay.
Okay. On the
And
port.
the outside boat is on starboard.
I don't think we can get that, can you?
Give me a moment. Give me a moment.
With A sails you can do.
Okay. Yeah. Give me a moment to think that through and see if I can put a diagram on the board behind me.
Yeah, the inside boat would still be entitled to mark room. He'd have to sail within the confines of mark room, that's directly to the mark.
Yeah.
Even though the outside boat is on starboard.
Yeah, that's my understanding. I've seen this scenario a number of times over the years, here quite a few times, and walking out starboard, out of port, calling me to go away. When actually I know, even though I'm port, I'm okay because I'm inside the zone and I'm going to jibe around the mark.
Yeah, well the inside boat is entitled to mark room.
Yep.
Okay, the only confusing thing on that is if the back into the other situation, if the inside boat is on starboard, and therefore he's both entitled to sail a proper course and he keeps his mark room. When he jives, the inside boat then loses his starboard right-of-way status, and then he must comply with the rule. Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure.
I think it's quite difficult trying to picture this one. What I'll do is I'll try and think of that, and maybe we can work out a diagram.
Okay, let me suggest we've got a few situations coming up, and one of them is we want to send you away with to think about, and we'll comment on it later. Maybe you'd like to send either Ben or myself a diagram of the situation, and we'll circulate it, and then we'll comment on that later as well with the answers to the quiz question that we had. Does that work?
What we're saying is we have a bit of a quiz here. We'll try and invite you to give us a diagram on that one because it's quite hard to visualise off the top of my head.
Can you not put it on the board behind you?
Well, I have. I'm just trying to work out whether through Zoom the board behind me has things the right orientation. Do you see these two boats here? And a mark.
Yes, fine, that's fine. Quickest here.
Yeah. This green boat is on port tack. Sailing downwind. And at the moment she enters the zone on port tack, the blue boat is overlapped outside her, and thereafter shall give room thereafter. Okay, so maybe if this is a scenario you're envisaging, the port tack boat is entitled to mark room to go around that, even though the starboard boat is on the outside, she must give room thereafter.
Yeah.
The same rules apply.
Yeah, thank you, Ben. That's the one I was after, and with poles, with the traditional spinnakers, I've certainly come across this one quite a few times.
Yeah. So the outside boat being the starboard boat. I think the key is that being on starboard at a mark, you don't have that unwieldy, overwhelming power to do whatever you want. You have to yield some of your power. So look, we've got a few scenarios. I know we've been going quite a long time, and I hope people are finding this useful. What we have is some maybe 4 or 5 more scenarios, very quick ones, which we invite people to the floor, either in here or remotely, to give an opinion on. if I just move forward.
Now wait a minute, before we do this, the idea is that these should be answered really quickly because these are on the water situations. You don't have time to debate on the water when you're in. So let's get some really quick reactions to the answers to these quiz questions.
So the first one then, again, if you have a quick look at that, the question is, who has marked room, blue or yellow?
Blue.
The overwhelming response over here is blue. Does everyone at home agree? I think we all agree that blue was clear ahead at the time she entered the zone, and therefore yellow has to give a mark with correct. Let's have a look at this one. Which one's that?
Yeah, that's all right.
Yep.
Blue. Blue.
So we've got blue here. Anyone from remotely want to give an opinion on this one? No? Are we all agreed blue still has mark room?
Even though yellow gained an overlap and was overlapped at the mark, he gained it too late.
Yeah, it all goes back to the situation when the first entered the zone. So blue again. Alrighty. A little bit interesting, this one. We'll give the people here a moment to have a think about this one.
Yeah, that was right away.
Yellow.
I would say nobody.
No, they
Yeah,
come on.
if they didn't pick the line, I would say
There
nobody.
was a collision, so
Rule 14.
well, okay, so let's ask ourselves the question, what was the situation when the first of the boats entered the zone? That's the first thing to consider. They were quite clearly overlapped, weren't they? If they were quite clearly overlapped, the rule says that the outside boat shall thereafter give the inside boat mark room. Okay? What is mark room? Is it room for the yellow to go wherever she wants all over the water? No. It's her to sail to the mark, or in this case, it's not a
She's right away.
She's right away, in which case she must comply with rule 18.4 jibe on a proper course around this mark.
A question here, please. If the yellow boat's got an A sail, asymmetric, and the blue boat's sailing with a conventional type pole, then their proper courses are different.
Yeah. The question from the floor was, if the yellow boat has an A sail and the blue boat had a conventional pole, which we find often in mixed fleet sailing, how do we deal with that? Well, let's just talk about the rule here. So, do we think yellow has taken more room than she needed?
Well, yellow's a right-of-way boat. What we don't know is how the overlap was established and whether yellow is constrained by Rule 17. But let's assume for the moment, Rule 17 off the wind says that the leeward boat, if it gains an overlap from astern and to leeward, cannot sail above its proper course. So let's assume that that doesn't apply. So the yellow boat can sail a proper course inside the mark until she gets to the point where she can jibe under Rule 18.4. If the yellow boat has an A sail, her proper course is higher than it would be with a symmetric spinnaker, so she's entitled to sail higher. But if the yellow boat is not right-of-way boat, mark room is simply to sail directly to the mark. So the difference is the inside boat right-of-way boat as well as being inside? Which in this case it is.
So So looking at the diagram, my personal opinion would seem to be that blue probably wouldn't do much.
Yeah, well, I guess you could say, did yellow take more room than necessary at the mark? Which would be a good question. But assuming she didn't, and assuming that she was not able to avoid the collision and there was no damage, then blue broke the rule. If yellow was unable to avoid the collision, she didn't break rule 14. If she could have avoided it by driving earlier or something, then she broke rule 14 as well, but was exonerated because there was no damage. But yellow's got a pretty strong case because he would say, well, I was going around the mark and blue altered course, and what could I do at that point to avoid a collision?
Okay, let's try this one. Okay, have a look at that one. We've only got, what, 2 more of these? Good. Anyone remotely want to offer an idea on this slide?
Yeah, you can't appreciate the video.
You cannot? So you're saying blue?
Yeah, blue, because the other boys have good time to react.
I would support that point of view. That was the intention when I drew the slide. Maybe I should put another couple of boats outside to make the point clearer.
Whatever happened, whatever the rules, it's pretty reckless, isn't it, by blue to come in there.
You're not entitled to mark room if the boat is unable to give it at the time, which I think yellow was unable to give it.
So 18.2F maybe applies here. That at the time, yellow needs to give mark room, she can't. So, okay.
No, but I think in this case, I think before they encountered, I think the yellow one should, I think the yellow one should ask the green one and the grey one to give room.
Yeah.
So the question, the suggestion is that yellow, well before we get to the zone here, should be prepping the guys outside her, saying, you know, there's a boat coming, you've got to give mark room, doing what she can to give that mark room. And I would agree that yellow does have some obligation to start talking to the boats outside her. And we'd probably ask whether she did or not. If she had done as much as she could, and maybe there was more boats outside these guys, then we would say there's nothing she could have done, in which case blue probably was wrong to come in here.
But the blue one can the blue one could protest the green and yellow and the grey.
It's going to be a busy room, right? Can the blue protest them all?
Yeah, because they all didn't give the room.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things. I mean, the key I think we're finding is that if it actually came down to the protest hearing, it becomes again a case of listening to all the evidence and finding out the balance of probabilities, what happened, as best we can. In a practical sense, on the water here, I would say, regardless of the rules, blue is pretty reckless, possibly to come in hot, screaming for room when there's a pinwheel of boats going around the mark.
What else did he?
The grey can't
Well,
see.
he has to avoid the mark, duck out.
Yeah.
Not entitled to room.
Blue could luff up and go behind these guys. And particularly, I remember the last Typhoon series, I think we all can remember that last Typhoon series because it was one of the only Typhoon series we had. But there's quite a lot of congestion down at that leeward right-hand mark. And depending on your boat and the style of boat you're sailing, you may think otherwise to come in hot to that leeward mark on the port A line, screaming for it. So safety is the most important part of this. But in this case, 18.2F possibly applies, and blue was not entitled to mark room because yellow just couldn't give it. Okay.
There's one more question up here.
Go on, one more question from the back here.
Blue's coming in, she's entitled to mark room. But isn't the onus on these other people to give it?
Yeah, so the question is again, is the onus on the yellow, the green and the purple boat there to give that mark room? And I think you're right, absolutely it is, that they're required to give a mark room. And if they can, they should.
If you've got 3 little sonatas with a TP52 coming down on you, there's not much you can do. Even if you can get out of the way, you're not going to be quick enough.
Yeah. So the question is a bit of, I think people are suggesting a bit of sympathy here for the yellow boat. She couldn't do much to get out of the way. So long as she's tried, I think she'll be forgiven, and would say the blue probably shouldn't have gone in there. Tom?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you do have to make the effort to give the mark room, but if there's absolutely nothing you can do because you've got 2 small boats and being poorly sailed very slowly outside you and they just can't get out there, the rules don't allow the blue to come in and crash into you. And that's what 18.2F is all about. Any more questions on this one?
Will the grey being brought one number 2?
We've got
the green and cannot see the blue, the number 2, yeah?
Peter, I see you raised your hand, and just give me a moment, I'll just answer one question here. The problem is whether the grey boat or the purple boat or whatever colour it is can't actually see the blue boat because she's totally blocked up.
Yeah, the spinnaker or whatever it is,
Yeah,
very
it's-
huge. Yeah? So,
It's quite difficult, isn't it?
so if you say he need to avoid, he need to see before he can avoid, and he follow the green before he follow the yellow.
Yeah, so again, it comes down to just asking each of the parties what happened, what did they see, and we're all human. If the blue boat is behind a whole bunch of boats inside that cannot see the blue boat, then again we've got to ask the question whether we should expect it to give room. On the other hand, if I am sailing in that blue boat, I may be sailing with the expectation that there could be a starboard boat, port boat coming in that I have to give room to. So set yourselves up as you sail, set yourself up with an understanding of all the rules that apply so that you can give the room, you can expect that. Peter, quick question from someone called Peter.
Yeah, I really refer to the on 2F. But on the outside road has been unable to give that room, then she's not required to do it. But for this to apply, there should be 2 conditions. A, the boat operating inside of the lab from the square. That's one. Or by taking to windward of the other boats. Then, from the time of the overlap begins, then the outside boats, if he cannot give the room, then she is not required to do that. But in this case, in particular, blue is not coming from a side, and also he is not taking, and therefore should F not apply next.
Blue established the overlap clear of stern. Maybe not in that picture, within 2 pictures further back.
Okay, so
Blue is going faster than the other 3. You establish the overlap from clear of stern.
It's difficult to see on this diagram, but the speed of the blue boat by the distance of the lines between their positions is trying to show that the blue did come from clear of stern.
Okay, my fault, the diagram is lousy.
But good point, Peter. The F does normally apply upwind, but also could apply downwind in the case of coming overlap from clear of stern. Last one then. This one is quite an interesting one. Again, we don't often have starboard landing.
This is a match racing one for the match races.
Anyone from the remote world want to hazard a guess on this one? Anyone locally?
How did yellow get into that position?
That fast as a match.
So these two boats are obviously coming up this starboard ley line for a starboard landing mark, windward mark. And the key here is that in position 1, the blue boat is clear ahead. Yeah. And we can sort of presume that the blue boat was clear ahead, entering the zone. And so she's probably entitled to mark ring. But do you remember Tom saying that if a boat passes head to wind, what happens? The rule 18 disappears if it's a beat to windward. And therefore, what rules do we have if there's no rule 18? Well, we have rule 10, or we have rule 13. Yeah? We have rule 10, which is the port tack, port starboard rule, and we have rule 13, which is wild tacking. And I think the blue boat has gotten in the way of the yellow boat while she was tacking. She doesn't have the mark room to be on opposite tacks to pass head to wind, and therefore I would say the blue boat broke rule 13 while she was tacking. Anyone got any comments on that one? The key here is that if you pass head to wind in the zone, your rights to mark room that you might have had before go puff flax, puff of smoke, and disappear. Alright?
So, for the match racers, the only way out of this situation for blue is to go just not quite go to head to wind, close to the mark, so that yellow has to go outside her. And once yellow has gone outside her, then blue can continue the attack and go around the mark. It's a common match racing situation.
Very tight to the mark.
Sorry?
Very tight to the mark.
Yep.
It's what we've called a mark trap. Actually, the blue is, if she does it properly, is in a quite powerful position, but as she didn't do it properly here, is messed it up. Okay, the last one's a very interesting one.
Well, why don't I talk through it since I put the diagram?
This is Tom's.
We're not going to ask you for comments on this now. You can take it away with you. We'll find a way of getting it to you. And you can all come back with comments and we'll debate it, because it's there are some questions of debate.
So if anyone wants to, screenshot it now, and we'll take your photos of it, and do come back by whatever channel the Healy Yacht Club puts out for this kind of thing.
Okay, so what happened here was yellow.
Where is the OP kits?
The yellow was on starboard, blue was on port. Blue came into the zone and tacked, and yellow had to go above head to wind to avoid it. Yellow then continued luff above head to wind by tacking for the mark, and blue tacked immediately. So blue is now inside yellow at position 4. And then at the mark, blue wanted to tack off to go around the mark. So there are maybe a few things in there, a few situations in there that you need to recognise the rules for. And we'll leave it with you as a quiz to work out what all the rules are.
Okay. Any real conclusion that you have?
No,
we're not going to give you a
conclusion.
That's what I was stopping you thinking about.
It's ruined your week, Cynthia, your weekend now.
No.
Ladies and gentlemen, look, we've actually come to the end of what we had prepared. I think we've been here quite a long time, and thank you to all of you guys who have turned up to the Hindi Haven with us, and also everyone who's remotely. Paul just has a hand up there. Just very quickly, Paul.
I saw you are recording. Will you send the link out for, because I missed the first half?
Yep, I get a thumbs up from Rob, who says we will send the link out or somehow make the recording available. So apologies for those who were there and had to suffer the technical difficulties. Thank you, Tom. Thank you for your contributions, both remotely and here. Thank you, Rob Haven, for putting this on. And if no one has any other comments or anything.
Thank you, Ben.
Absolutely.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Thanks very much, Ben, Tom, and Leslie for arranging this.
So I think we'll call this Zoom meeting finished. Thank you very much, guys. You want to